I think you all heard in the news over the evening that the governor has expressed some things related to Real ID that make it more difficult for it to pass. And I will tell you that I am very concerned that the governor has made some public statements that he wants to work with the Senate DFL to defeat Real ID unless we allow language to allow illegal immigrants to get driver's license. I have been opposed to Real ID myself personally. I was waiting for a new administration and whether they would say we no longer have to have it or not. But President Trump and the present leadership of the House and Senate have not changed course on requiring Real ID, so we need to get it done. And so what Republicans in the Senate have proposed is that we simply pass Real ID. We provide two options. One option is that if you want a Real ID, you can get a Real ID, which is what most people want so that they can fly and not be stopped at the airports. But if you still don't want a Real ID, we want to allow for that and allow people not to get a Real ID. In the House Republicans have offered language that restricts illegal immigration, those that are illegal immigrants from getting a driver's license. The governor is saying that the Senate Democrats should not pass Real ID with Republicans unless we include language that says illegal immigrants can get driver's license. Senate Republicans have a simple strategy. We would just want to focus on Real ID. Let's get Real ID done. So let's not do anything with the language related to illegal immigrants. Let's leave that off the issue, off the table. That should be worked on separately. If people want to pass that, they should work on separate language, but to include it with Real ID jeopardizes Real ID. And so I am very disappointed that we are linking illegal immigration to Real ID. It jeopardizes whether it can pass or not. We want it to pass, and so we're asking that the governor would reconsider that position. And with that, I want Senator Pratt to give you some more data on the Real ID bill so you know exactly what we're trying to do, and then we'll answer any questions that you have.
Thank you and good morning. Well, the Senate's been very deliberate in saying that licenses for undocumented immigrants and the Real ID are two separate issues. And in fact, this was the very issue that killed this bill last year. Now, I've been meeting with the governor's staff and been trying to get a commitment, haven't gotten one. And I'm really disappointed that after all those attempts to find out that the governor went to the DFL Senate caucus to explain his position rather than letting me know, but also having it in secret and in private, not being up front with with Minnesotans. The governor went from saying that this was a catastrophic issue, that Real ID wasn't passed, and demanding a special session. Now he's playing politics with the issue and the ability for Minnesotans to fly commercially. If the DFL doesn't stop these games, it's going to be extremely disruptive for our businesses and families who need to travel next year. And so we're committed to getting this thing done. We're committed to moving forward with a Real ID bill that is clean, that doesn't mix the two issues together, and leaving the issue after we pass Real ID in the exact same spot that it is today. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions.
Forgive me if I'm not getting this correctly. Essentially, you and the governor agree on this issue, that he doesn't want it. You believe it should be separate from the bill. So what's the deal?
So the governor, as I understand it, has told the Senate DFL that unless we open up our rulemaking to allow an administrative change that would give undocumented immigrants the ability to get a driver's license through the rulemaking process rather than the statutory process, that they should vote against the bill. And so he's effectively linking undocumented driver's licenses with the Real ID. And we're being very deliberate and very explicit in saying that they're two separate issues, as Senator Gazelka said. If someone wants to bring a bill that talks about driver's licenses for undocumented immigrants, they're welcome to bring it.
Senator, isn't your issue with Republicans in the House and not the governor?
No, You want to talk to that?
Yeah. No, Senate Republicans would be closer to the House language on illegal immigration and real ID, or real IDs. But we recognize that won't pass. That, you know, so we're trying to work with the governor and with the Democrats, frankly, to just focus on real ID. And if we can get real ID done, then we can work on that issue later. But Senate Republicans are closer to where House Republicans are than we are where the governor is.
Senator, do you think that undocumented immigrants should have driver's licenses in Minnesota?
No, I do not. What I do support and what most Republicans support is immigration, or immigrants in general should have driver's licenses. If you come here legally, if you have a green card, you can get, the way we have the language, you can have a real ID. We're simply saying, and why I use the word illegal instead of undocumented, is illegal. If you're here illegally, then you shouldn't expect to get benefits from us related to that. But we absolutely support immigration. We support the process. If you have a green card, we want you to get a real ID. But that is a separate issue, and there's passion on both sides of it. I respect the governor's passion on this issue, but it's not the real ID issue. The real ID issue is if we don't provide this, people are going to go to the airport next year and they're not going to be able to fly. And that's about 5% of the public at any given year. So it's not the same 5%. Every year it's a different 5%. And why do we want to do that to them? And if you go back a year or two, if you read the governor's quotes, he said that this is really serious, we have to get it done. We agree. And so the Senate language is simply right down the middle. We're saying not the House language, not the governor language, let's just do real ID.
Is the worry here that you're not really more strong on this issue?
This has not been, up till today, a Republican-Democrat issue. I think most people have recognized on both sides of the aisle that we need to get real ID done. There are some Republicans and some Democrats, for a variety of reasons, that don't want to do real ID. Some of those folks want to protect people's data. That was my position, but as I began to look at this more and I see how much data the federal government already has, and you read the story of Snowden, you think they probably have it all anyway. And so for me, that wasn't an issue. But the big issue is with the new administration, they have not changed. We have to get it done. And so we're saying, let's just get real ID done. We're going to fight over the other issue, but let's get real ID done now and not wait till some other time.
But to underscore Tim's question, isn't this, you're the Senate Majority Leader, isn't it your problem to get 34 votes for this? Why is it suddenly the governor jeopardizing it? If you had all the
Yeah.
members, you would have no problem.
I sort of look at, like, on this issue, something like Sunday sales of liquor. It wasn't a Republican issue, it wasn't a Democrat issue. I brought it to the floor. I had no idea whether that bill would pass or not pass. This is a similar issue. Like I said, you had Democrats that had the majority last year trying to pass this. They were leading. A number of Republicans voted for it, some voted against it. But now we're down to a deadline. We have a new administration federally. They say we got to get it done, which means both Democrats and Republicans and leadership at the federal level say we got to have real ID. And so I'm saying that we should do it. I have a few members that are passionately opposed to it. And so it's either going to pass because we have a team effort or it's not. And so when the governor says and meets with them and says, I want you to defeat it, that's a problem.
Can you put a number on that few members? Limmer, Anderson, Westrom had some doubts this morning.
Well, the first two for sure. Beyond that, it could be a few, it could be none. I mean, there is a group that struggles with this issue on why do we want to give the federal government more power, state rights issue, privacy issues, and so that's why I recognize it as it's in the end, the governor has to sign whatever we do anyway. We have to work with the House, Senate, and governor, and that has to be something that we all agree on, which is why I'm trying to keep the other issue out of it.
Senator, you recognize, everyone knows that there are some very strong feelings in the House on the driver's license.
Yes.
You expressed your strong feelings to completely leave it out.
Right.
But I kind of hear maybe some doubts in you about whether there's some room for compromise on this, if you're able to pass this in your chamber.
I still think I'm optimistic that the House and Senate can find compromise language that we will bring to the governor. But knowing that the governor is very passionate about the issue of illegal immigration, IDs for them, And so what do we do with his passion? And that's why I think the Senate approach is the right approach. We're just saying, leave that one alone. We're not changing anything, plus or minus. We're just saying focus on real ID.
And Senator Kravitz,
Yeah, I just wanted to touch on Rachel's question here just for a second. You know, what we're trying to do doesn't shut the door on anything. It just simply leaves the status quo where it's at. I think it was reported that we would put a ban on it, and that's not the case. Any senator could come in and write a law. What we're not doing is putting in that one piece of language into statute. We're leaving it in the current rules. But this was a bipartisan bill last year, a highly bipartisan bill last year, and we had a governor that was telling us that this was imperative for us to pass. And so I met with a number of people who just said, Senator, will you please leave the status quo? We don't want the House language. At least leave the status quo, and we've done that. And I've met my commitment, and I kept my agreement. And now to have the governor come back and behind the scenes tell his caucus to try to force us to put in a very controversial piece of language, it feels like he's not been dealing with this in a very open manner. And that's why I'm shocked to hear it. I was extremely surprised.
and Senator, then, if your bill, to clarify, if your bill passes, would undocumented immigrants be allowed in Minnesota to have a driver's license?
Not without some sort of action, and it takes statutory action to get it done. There was a law passed in 2013 out of the Senate that would have allowed undocumented to get a driver's license, and there were a number of statutory changes. If the governor just changes the rule, and I told him this at breakfast a couple of weeks ago, if the governor just changes the rules, we become a haven for fraud and identity theft. And so we have to be able to do this correctly. And so that's why I think the governor's comments are so disturbing, is that, and why it just seems like he's playing politics with this issue, stranding millions of Minnesotans from being able to enter federal buildings and military bases and flying commercial airplanes for this small number of people that would be impacted by what he's trying to do. And so keeping these two separate issues seems to be the right way to go, because we took up undocumented driver's licenses as a separate issue 4 years ago, and there was no talk about real ID.
What happens, what are Minnesotans, if this doesn't pass, what do you think Minnesota's reaction is going to be if we don't get it?
Well, I think most Minnesotans are going to be outraged that we couldn't work together and get this done. I've had dozens of emails this year and hundreds last year talking about this issue. I got a note from a mom who went down to Kansas to visit her son in a military infirmary, and she couldn't get in on the base to see him because she didn't have a passport with her. We've heard of I got a letter from a guy who made an appointment at the White House a year ago to visit, and he got a letter saying he wouldn't be able to enter with his current ID, that he needed to bring additional credentials. The fact is, Minnesotans, it's not going to stop our ability to fly, but it's going to make it a lot more difficult and a lot more cumbersome. We're already complaining about lines at TSA. We have a lot of people that are already going through TSA pre-check and giving a lot of this information already. They want the convenience to be able to get through. They think that their current ID should meet those standards. And we're talking predominantly about business people and people who fly a lot, but also families going on vacation and having to do enhanced screening with pat-downs and going through the luggage. It's intrusive. And so they want to be able to just have the convenience to fly and conduct their business.
I asked the leader to name names on the Republican side. Have you gotten any Democratic votes other than Senator Little and Rest as a co-sponsor? Anyone else?
There have been a number of Democrats that have told me that they were going to support it, but they wanted to see what the final bill looked like.
And so you have, other than Senator Little, you have not a single Democrat vote?
I do. We'll see if we keep them.
But you have in committee so far, you got one,
I got 2.
with Rest as the co-sponsor?
Oh, that's right. She wasn't on the committee, so I have 1.
Okay.
So, Rachel, I can tell you a number of Democratic senators have said they want to support it. So that is why I'm concerned about the governor talking to the DFL caucus in the Senate to say don't do it. So that's where we're struggling, as we actually, I don't want to name the name of the senator that came into my office and said, please don't do the House language, and we had a conversation about just being neutral on it, and that was a workable solution, but now it's not a workable solution. And that's where it feels like we're playing politics on something that is more important than just playing games. It's people actually not being able to fly next year.
You expressed your opposition to immigrant driver's licenses. Are you not at all sympathetic to what advocates say, which is this will make our roads safer because undocumented immigrants or illegal immigrants are driving already, but they don't necessarily have insurance and haven't been through the test?
So I think that is a valid point that I listen to, but the overlying principle that we're rewarding illegal activity overrides that for me. And so, but like I said, if you are here legally, if you have a green card, you're not a citizen yet, you're going to be able to get the license. It's only if you're here illegally, and that's the difference.
And Senator Pratt, would your version of the bill remove status check from driver's licenses to either be compliant or non-compliant, or would that continue?
That would continue.
Thank you.
Thanks.